You think having money is what makes you attractive? You think hitting the gym and looking good is the key? Let me tell you something that's going to completely shatter everything you believe about attraction. She's dating a guy who's average looking at best. He drives a beat-up Honda Civic. He doesn't have a six-pack, doesn't have a six-figure income, doesn't have designer clothes or a luxury apartment. Meanwhile, her Instagram DMs are absolutely flooded with better-looking guys. Guys with money, guys with status, guys literally begging for her attention. But she's not interested. She won't even look at them. Why? Because that average guy has the one thing that beats looks and money every single time. And in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what that is, and more importantly, how to develop it yourself. Because once you have this, attraction becomes effortless. Women will choose you over richer, better-looking men. But here's the catch. Most men will never discover this because they're too busy chasing the wrong things. Stay until the end because this will change everything. Here's a fundamental truth that most men never realize. Every single woman you meet is subconsciously running a test on you, not consciously. She's not sitting there with a clipboard and a checklist, methodically evaluating your every move. But on a deep, primal, neurological level, her nervous system is asking one critical question that will determine whether you're relationship material or just another guy she'll forget about in a week. That question is, can this man remain stable when everything around him is falling apart? This comes directly from evolutionary psychology, and it's hardwired into female attraction at the deepest biological level. For hundreds of thousands of years throughout human evolution, a woman's survival and her children's survival depended entirely on choosing a man who wouldn't abandon ship when things got difficult. When the tribe was under attack, when resources were scarce, when she was pregnant and vulnerable, when children were sick, when conflicts arose, she needed a man who would stay calm, make rational decisions under pressure, and not crumble when the stakes were high. That survival instinct didn't magically disappear just because we live in modern apartments and order food on smartphone apps. It's still there, deeply embedded in female psychology, influencing attraction in ways most women couldn't articulate even if you asked them directly. So what does she do? She creates chaos, not maliciously, not even consciously in most cases, but she instinctively observes how you respond when she's emotional, when she's being difficult, when she's testing your boundaries, when she's bringing up problems that seem to come out of nowhere. The guy who gets reactive, test failed. He's emotionally unstable. The guy who gets defensive and starts explaining himself, test failed. He needs her validation. The guy who needs her approval to feel secure, test failed. He's not a rock, he's a leaf in the wind. The guy who matches her emotional chaos with his own chaos, complete test failure. He's another child for her to manage, not a man she can rely on. But the guy who stays calm in the middle of her storm, the guy who doesn't need her validation to feel secure about himself, the guy who can say, I understand you're upset, we'll talk when you're ready, and then actually remain unbothered, that's the guy who passes the test, and passing that test triggers attraction at a level that's more powerful than any sports car, any chiseled jawline, or any bank account balance. Your ability to remain grounded when she's in chaos is more attractive than anything money can buy. This is the foundation of everything else we're going to discuss. Here's where most men completely destroy their chances without even realizing it. They need validation from women to feel good about themselves, and women can smell this neediness from a mile away like sharks smell blood in water. Listen to how this plays out in real life. She compliments you, your entire mood improves and you're walking on air. She doesn't text back for 2 hours, you feel anxious and check your phone every 30 seconds. She seems interested in you, you're on cloud 9 telling all your friends about her. She pulls away slightly, you panic and start chasing harder, texting more, becoming more available. This pattern is what I call emotional dependence, and it's the fastest, most efficient way to kill attraction that exists. Why? Because when you need her validation to feel good about yourself, you've just made her responsible for your emotional state. You've handed her the keys to your mood, your self-esteem, your entire emotional world. And that's an exhausting, overwhelming burden that she doesn't want and didn't sign up for. Think about it from her perspective. If your happiness depends on her, what happens when she has a bad day? What happens when she needs support? She can't lean on you because you're too busy leaning on her. You're not a partner, you're a dependent. But the man who's emotionally grounded, he's complete whether she's interested or not. She's an addition to his already fulfilling life, not the foundation that his entire existence is built upon. He has his own mission, his own purpose, his own sources of fulfillment that exist completely independent of her attention. Here's the paradox that confuses the hell out of most men. The less you need her, the more she wants you. The moment you genuinely don't need her validation, not as a tactic but as a real internal state, you become the most valuable thing in her world. This is called non-neediness in attraction psychology, and research consistently shows it's arguably the single most attractive trait a man can possess. More attractive than physical looks, more attractive than wealth, more attractive than status. Why? Because if you've got your mission handled, your purpose clear, your life together, and she's just a beautiful complement to that existing foundation, you're operating from abundance, and abundance is absolutely intoxicating to women. But if she is your mission, if getting her attention is your primary purpose, if your entire life revolves around whether she responds to your text, you're operating from scarcity, and scarcity is repulsive. It triggers every red flag in her nervous system. There's a fascinating and well-documented concept in neuroscience and psychology called emotional contagion. It means that emotions are literally contagious between people, especially in close relationships. This isn't metaphorical. It's measurable through brain imaging and stress hormone analysis. When you're anxious, her nervous system picks up on that anxiety, and she becomes anxious. When you're insecure, she becomes insecure about you and the relationship. When you're unstable and reactive, she feels unstable and unsafe in your presence. Your emotional state literally transfers to her through mirror neurons and unconscious behavioral cues. But here's the incredibly powerful part of this. When you're grounded, calm and stable, she feels safe. And safety, emotional safety specifically, is the absolute foundation of feminine attraction. Women don't fall in love with chaos. They don't build futures with unpredictability. They commit to men who make them feel secure, not financially secure, not physically secure, but emotionally secure. Think of yourself as the thermostat in the room, not the thermometer. The thermometer reacts to whatever temperature the room happens to be. The thermostat sets the temperature regardless of external conditions. When she's emotional, when she's stressed, when she's spiraling into anxiety or anger, you're the thermostat. You set the emotional temperature of the interaction. Here's a concrete, real-world example. She comes home stressed about work. She's venting, maybe getting increasingly upset. Her energy is chaotic and negative. The reactive guy, the thermometer guy, matches her energy. He gets stressed too, tries to immediately fix everything, gets frustrated with her mood, or starts offering unsolicited advice that makes things worse. The grounded guy, the thermostat guy, he listens without absorbing her stress as his own. He remains calm. He's present and attentive but not reactive. And through that calmness, through that stable presence, he actually helps regulate her nervous system back to baseline. She calms down not because he fixed her problem or said the perfect thing, but because his presence itself is inherently calming and grounding. That's masculine energy in its purest form. That's what she's been craving her entire life. That's what beats six-pack abs, luxury cars and corner offices. A man who can remain the calm center while everything around him is in motion. That's irreplaceable. That's what creates deep, lasting attraction that superficial qualities can never compete with. Here's something that women understand intuitively, but most men never grasp. Anyone can look good when life is good. Any guy can be charming on a first date at a nice restaurant. Any man can be fun and attractive when everything's going smoothly and there's no pressure. The real test, the test that determines everything, comes during crisis. When you lose your job, do you completely fall apart or do you adapt and strategize? When she's sick and vulnerable, do you step up and take care of things or do you emotionally check out? When plans fall apart, do you panic and become useless or do you calmly pivot to plan B? When someone disrespects you publicly, do you overreact violently or handle it with controlled strength? When she's having a legitimate emotional breakdown, do you make it about yourself or do you hold space for her? These moments, these crisis moments, reveal who you really are beneath the surface presentation, and she's watching. Not to judge you harshly, but to see if you're actually the man she thinks you are, or if that was just a persona you were performing. There's a well-researched concept in relationship psychology called stress response patterns. How someone responds to significant stress is one of the single most accurate predictors of long-term relationship success. Not how they act on vacation when everything's perfect. Not how romantic they are when they're trying to impress you, but how they function when everything's falling apart and the pressure is crushing. The emotionally grounded man doesn't deny problems or pretend everything's fine when it clearly isn't. That's not groundedness, that's avoidance. But he also doesn't spiral into catastrophic thinking, doesn't become paralyzed by anxiety, doesn't make everything worse with his reaction. He acknowledges the reality of the situation, stays focused on solutions rather than drowning in problems, and maintains his composure even when his world is burning down. This is exactly why women are attracted to firefighters, soldiers, surgeons, first responders, not primarily because of the uniform or the status, but because these are men who are professionally trained to stay calm under extreme pressure. That ability to function when most people would be completely overwhelmed, that calmness under pressure, is one of the most primal attractions that exist in human psychology. You want to know the real reason why that average-looking guy gets the incredible girl? Because when her car broke down at midnight in the rain, he handled it calmly without complaint. When she had a family emergency, he was her rock instead of adding to her stress. When she lost her job and was spiraling, he didn't panic. He absorbed her fear and gave her strength. That's irreplaceable. That's what creates attraction so deep that looks and money become almost irrelevant in comparison. Let me tell you something that's going to hurt some of you to hear, but it's absolutely critical you understand this. Being nice doesn't make you attractive. Being agreeable and accommodating doesn't make you desirable. Trying to please her at the expense of yourself, tolerating disrespect because you're afraid of losing her, none of that creates attraction. In fact, it destroys it. What actually creates powerful attraction? Having standards, having boundaries, being willing to walk away from anyone, including her, who doesn't treat you with basic respect. This is emotional groundedness in action. The grounded man knows his value. He doesn't tolerate disrespect or manipulation. He doesn't accept breadcrumbs of attention. He doesn't chase someone who's not clearly choosing him. Not out of ego, not out of defensive pride, but out of fundamental self-respect. And here's the paradox that seems to make no logical sense but is psychologically undeniable. The moment you're genuinely willing to lose her, you become infinitely more attractive. Why? Because that willingness to walk away communicates something incredibly powerful at a subconscious level. I'm valuable enough that I don't need to tolerate poor treatment. I would rather be alone than be disrespected. Women test boundaries constantly. Again, this isn't malicious or conscious manipulation. It's unconscious evaluation. She shows up late repeatedly with weak excuses. She cancels plans last minute. She speaks to you disrespectfully. She flirts with other guys in front of you to see your reaction. The needy guy accepts all of this because he's terrified of losing her. He makes excuses for her behavior. He convinces himself it's not that bad. He tolerates disrespect because he doesn't believe he can do better. The grounded guy, he addresses it directly the first time. That doesn't work for me. If it continues, he's willing to walk away completely, not as a manipulation tactic, not as a game, but because he genuinely values himself more than he values her approval. Guess which one she respects? Guess which one she actually pursues and fights to keep? Self-respect isn't arrogance. It's not being an asshole or treating her badly. It's simply valuing yourself enough to have standards and enforce boundaries. And that standard setting, that boundary enforcement, it's incredibly attractive because most men are so desperate for female attention that they have no standards whatsoever. When you respect yourself, she has no choice but to respect you too. And respect is the foundation that attraction is built upon. Here's what separates boys from men in the most fundamental way possible. Boys make women their mission. Men make women part of their mission. And that distinction changes everything. The most attractive thing you can possibly do is have a life that's so compelling, so purposeful, so directed toward meaningful goals that she feels fortunate to be part of it, not the center of it, not the purpose of it, but a valued part of something bigger. When you have a clear mission, building a business, mastering a craft, creating something meaningful, pursuing excellence in your field, contributing something valuable to the world, you emanate a completely different energy. You're not available 24/7 because you're building something important. You're not sitting by your phone anxiously waiting for her text because you're deeply focused on your goals and your work. And here's the counterintuitive part that confuses men who don't understand attraction. This unavailability, this focus on purpose, this refusal to drop everything for female attention, it makes her want you more, not less. Why? Because a man with purpose is genuinely rare in modern society. A man who doesn't immediately drop everything the moment a woman shows interest is valuable. A man who's building something bigger than a relationship is attractive on the deepest biological level because he's demonstrating provider potential and future orientation. Women don't actually want to be your everything, no matter what romantic movies tell you. They want to be an important, valued part of your life, but not the entirety of it. They want a man who would be absolutely fine without them, but actively chooses to include them. That choice, that optional inclusion rather than desperate need, is what creates respect and lasting attraction. This is emotional independence. This is groundedness. This is the difference between the guy she dates casually and the guy she can't stop thinking about. When your purpose is crystal clear, you become grounded automatically. You're not swayed by her moods because you're anchored to something deeper and more permanent. You're not desperate for her attention because you're getting fulfillment and validation from your meaningful work. You're not reactive to her drama because you have genuinely bigger things to focus on. That doesn't mean you ignore her or treat her as unimportant. It means you love her from a place of abundance rather than need. You include her in your mission rather than making her your mission. And that purpose-driven inclusion is the most attractive form of love that exists. In a world of endless distraction, constant notifications, infinite scrolling, and fractured attention spans, being fully present with another human being has become an actual superpower. And women feel this quality of presence instantly and viscerally. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're checking your phone every 30 seconds during dinner, you're not present and she feels invisible. You can look like a Hollywood actor, but if you're mentally checked out during conversation, just waiting for your turn to talk, you're not present and she feels unheard. You can say all the right words, but if your mind is somewhere else, worried about work or thinking about your problems, you're not present and she knows it. Emotional groundedness means you're here, fully here, right now, not ruminating about the past, not anxious about the future. Not thinking about what you're going to say next, just completely, totally present in this exact moment with this person in front of you. When you're talking to her, you're actually listening, deeply listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak or planning your response. When you're with her, you're not half thinking about work or scrolling Instagram. You're genuinely there, fully engaged. This level of presence is incredibly rare in modern dating. Most guys are so anxious, so in their heads, so worried about saying the right thing or making the right impression that they're never actually present. They're performing instead of being. But the grounded man, he's calm enough internally to just be. No performance, no trying, just authentic presence. And that presence creates a depth of connection that surface-level attraction can never achieve. Women describe this experience as being truly seen. When a man is genuinely present, not trying to impress, not performing, not thinking 3 steps ahead, she feels seen and understood in a way that's absolutely intoxicating. Not because he's doing anything special or saying perfect things, but because he's fully there with her. This is why meditation, mindfulness practices, and emotional regulation work matter. They're not just trendy self-help concepts. They're practical tools for developing the presence that makes you magnetically attractive without trying. Let's talk about confidence. Real confidence, not the fake, performative, overcompensating version that most men mistake for the real thing. Most men think confidence means being the loudest guy in the room, being the most successful person there, being the best looking, having all the answers, dominating every conversation, never showing vulnerability or uncertainty. But that's not confidence. That's insecurity wearing a very obvious mask. That's fear pretending to be strength. And women see through it immediately because real confidence feels completely different. Real confidence is quiet. It's being genuinely comfortable with who you are, including your flaws and limitations. It's not needing to prove anything to anyone. It's being okay with silence. Being okay with not being the best at something, being okay with uncertainty and not having all the answers. This is emotional groundedness at its absolute peak. When you're internally stable and secure, you don't need external validation. You don't need her to think you're perfect. You don't need to impress strangers. You don't need to win every argument or be right about everything. You're just fundamentally solid in who you are. And here's what makes this so attractive: that internal stability gives her permission to relax completely. She doesn't have to manage your fragile ego. She doesn't have to walk on eggshells around your insecurities. She doesn't have to constantly reassure you or build you up. She can just be herself because you're secure enough to let her. The most attractive men I've ever met, and I mean genuinely attractive, not just physically good looking, aren't the richest or the most successful or the best looking. They're the most comfortable in their own skin. They're the ones who don't need the room to validate them. They're the ones who are completely grounded in who they are, flaws and all. That groundedness, that quiet confidence, that internal security, that's what beats looks and money. That's what makes a woman feel safe enough to fully open her heart. That's what creates the kind of attraction that leads to deep, lasting love, instead of temporary infatuation. So let's bring everything together, because I want to make absolutely sure you understand not just what to do, but why it fundamentally matters and how it changes your entire life, not just your dating life. We've covered the 8 psychological reasons why emotional groundedness beats looks and money every single time. The chaos test. Staying calm in her storm proves you're reliable. The validation vacuum, not needing her, makes you infinitely more attractive. Emotional contagion. Your stability literally calms her nervous system. The crisis reveal. Pressure exposes your true character and she's watching. Self-respect magnetism. Boundaries and standards create powerful attraction. Purpose over people. Mission-driven men are irresistible to quality women. Presence over presence. Being fully here is rare and deeply attractive. Real confidence. Quiet internal security beats loud external performance. But here's the bigger picture that I absolutely need you to understand. This isn't really about winning with women. This isn't about playing mind games or trying to outsmart her or using psychological tricks. This is about something far more fundamental and life-changing. This is about becoming a man who cannot be moved from his center, a man who chooses his battles wisely, a man who protects his peace above all external validation, a man who knows his worth and lives accordingly. The beautiful irony of all of this: when you genuinely develop emotional groundedness, when it's real and not performed, attraction becomes completely effortless. You're not trying to get her. You're not using tactics. You're just being the most grounded, stable version of yourself, and that authenticity is magnetic. The right woman will respond to this strength with deep respect and genuine desire. She'll recognize that you're not like the other men she's dealt with. She'll understand that drama and manipulation don't work on you. And over time, she'll actually test you less, not more, because she learns that chaos isn't your language. The wrong woman will escalate when you refuse to play her games. She'll get angrier when you don't give her the reaction she wants. And honestly, that's incredibly valuable information. It shows you exactly who you're dealing with before you waste years of your life.